But you're here.
But we know Alyssa is not able to come, Lenny is not able to come, and Ernie is not feeling well. She'll try to come in by Zoom. So I think that's it, right? Oh, except for Robin, and as you said,
I just have a feeling she's very busy right now.
So the one thing I want to alert us to is, and you could see it on the agenda later in the meeting, Phil Davis, who's the middle school principal, will join us to kind of kick off a discussion about the middle school art project. He was incredibly excited about the fact that there is money to do this. And so it seemed like in the case of the school, it was good to bring the principal in first. There's Robin. So we could have a chance to talk about how he'd like to proceed. Because, you know, whether they want kids involved, whether this is good timing. So we thought we would just start with the conversation and then we can pick up, you know, at a next meeting, more formalizing it. He's at the dentist right now. So I told him we'd probably get to him around 6, but when he comes, we can break what we're doing and take that up. Let's, since we have a quorum, thank you, everybody. Let's have a vote to accept the minutes of August 28th.
So moved. Seconded.
Any changes? Did people have?
I hesitate to make any suggestion because the last time I thought there was a typo, but it wasn't.
No, go for it.
But under other business, Nandy asks about the High Hanover Middle.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's minute, but
we'll correct that because it'll be on the web. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, some updates. So last night we had a second reading of the ordinance changes, and the changes were accepted. In the interim, but with a question raised, Kate and I worked on an amendment. And the amendment is this, that right now the wording, as you remember, is that percent for art is based on buildings, new or rehabilitated. But things like Prescott Park, things like the skate park, playgrounds are not, wouldn't be defined as buildings, which is why we're not going to get money for the skate park. So we proposed changing the language to the basis being capital construction for any public construction projects, excluding roadway and utility infrastructure, but not excluding facilities such as pumping stations and treatment facilities. So that amendment passed, which means, you know, as did the raising it to 30 million as the base, as the ceiling. So that would potentially, with the police station, with Prescott Park, with playground construction, that would expand opportunities. So I think it's a really positive move. And it would also mean that those are the places where people will see public art, you know, so it's really, I'm glad to see that. I noted, I checked online, and most states that have percent for art do it on buildings, but a few do it on capital construction.
Do you know what cities those are? That anything in New England that we would know?
Not that I saw in New England. But the changes, well, the changes were accepted because it's a substantive change. There has to be another reading and another public hearing, and that will be on October 7th. Kate, I was just describing last night. So I think it's all very positive. And again, if anybody wants to come to speak at that public hearing, I was the only one who spoke last night. There doesn't seem to be any opposition to doing this. So hopefully by October 7th, that would be in place. And then that opens the way for many more projects down.
But it's not retroactive, correct?
Well, what do you think? I don't think
not, so. And you wouldn't want it to be, because there's there's actually, there are a few projects right now that were in the pipeline before that I'm not sure have been tagged for public art, but qualify under the former guidelines, and the work was done under the former guidelines, like community campus. Currently, the improvements that were made to.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Is that more, that's not more than 5 million though.
No, but it was already
under the
completed.
previous guidelines.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was already completed. The improvements to Lister, the moving of Lister and the improvements there qualified. They were over 3 million. So there's that project sitting. And
was money set aside for public art?
No,
Project?
I doubt it.
probably not. But I would say I'm not sure that for several projects that has happened. I think it's the city manager has set it aside after the fact.
And that's a wonderful project for public art, since it's going to have students and see so many people. So good. So anyway, all good news, I think. The Jabari sculpture, a contract has been sent, and they said they have no substantive issues with it. They have some language tweaks they want to make. Right now, they're evacuating for the hurricane, so that's on their mind. And do you want to say anything about that? No. So I think the only contract changes, we probably encouraged a slightly longer timeline. They felt they could do it in 28 weeks, but 28 weeks with our winter season, they're not going to be able to install or do some of the work. But hopefully, if they seem to have no problems with the contract, they'll be able to get started on the work soon. Nancy, you wanted to talk about that certificate of appreciation, which we do have I did put on a PowerPoint slide.
Yeah, I think that brought that up as a good idea. Was it Beth? And yes, it was Beth, because that's what I ran by her. And I offered to take a stab at it, just to thank, because we probably will have other people sitting on these committees, just to thank them and formally appreciate the work they put in. For this one, as you can see, I just threw in a little location of where this piece is going. That's just an idea. I don't know, and we just thought we'd look at it before we decided yay or nay.
I think it's a really nice idea.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, then we can
Move to accept.
I will create, I need a list of everybody with the way they spell their name. I'll create the certificates, send them to you, and then
We send it to them.
print, and then you can send them, or should we print them? How do we want to, what do we think?
I think it'd be nice to print them and send them in the mail.
Okay, can that happen? Should we do that? Who does that?
Anything's possible, Nancy. However, there'll be a delay.
Right.
And I don't think we need them for ourselves, but it's really for our guests.
Yes.
Good.
Well, I won't make them quickly. How about that?
Not only am I, okay. Yep. Good.
Good. So that a tradition we should start and then remember, because undoubtedly we'll have others coming in. The opening event for Mortal Cod, and I have notes from Ernie about that. Remember, this is really a Portsmouth 400 project. So the good news is that Portsmouth 400 has some money to put forth a ceremony that, like the ceremony that for some of us who went to the opening of the Endeavor sculpture, they had music, they had like coffee and donuts, special little treat cookies made up for people. And so Ernie, Judy Miller, and Nancy London, who were the committee that worked on that, are planning that. And they'd be happy to have someone from our committee join them if anybody would like to do that in the planning.
When is it?
Oh, I'm sorry. They planning it for late October. It should be installed by then because Terrence is on schedule. You've probably seen the blue lights if you've gone by there at night. It's incredible blue. It really
It
is
is.
very striking.
It's beautiful.
And what they would like to do is to connect that to the permanent lighting for the Endeavor, which has been installed, which is stronger lighting than what's been there,
Oh, good, because that lighting was pretty weak.
was weak, and the descriptive plaque that Ellen did. Ellen, I haven't gone to see it, but I understand it's there. Have you seen it?
Yes,
Are you pleased with it?
yes.
Where is it relative to the sculpture itself?
If it's to the left of the sculpture,
Like to the north? Would that be the north?
I don't know if you're standing on the pathway,
Okay,
and the sculpture is in front of you, it's to the left.
Okay.
You can't miss it.
Okay.
It's a fairly large object there.
so she will let us know when that's going to be. Obviously, we'll all be invited to be there. And Ernie raised a question, which I thought was good, of it's a good time to also announce any plans we have for the future. Now, we don't necessarily have dollars yet, but I thought it would be a good opportunity to kind of set up an opportunity for donations or interested parties who would like to contribute to it, because there is certainly room there for additional sculptures. And obviously that will get press and give us an
Have
opportunity.
an easy way for people to donate, like a link or a QR code or something?
You know, we don't, but
I think that would be really nice.
Kate, does the city?
I'm channeling my inner Nancy Pearson.
We have a policy. Do we have an easy way to donate though?
I think the city now, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the city now takes credit card donations.
I do take PayPal and Venmo on our bills there,
Bills,
our
yeah.
sewer bills.
Yes, and I think they've set up a way to generally make donations that way, but
Kate, if you could
I would
find
need to
that
check
out,
out.
because I think that's a really good idea. And we'll be talking about money tonight, so you can see that that's an important component.
Would you do sort of an intro of park and then
Yes.
some of talk about Pierce Island, maybe a couple things? that
Yes,
are coming down the
exactly. It
pike?
gives us a good opportunity to do that. And you know, I'm not sure what all they're planning, but last time, if you remember, they also had a very nice little, I'll call it a bookmark, like a rack card with a glossy photograph of the sculpture. And I don't know if they're planning to do something like that, but I think, you know, that's why they have some dollars to spend on it.
Cool.
And I'm really pleased they haven't come back to us for money. They've been able to cover it. But if anyone wants to be part of that committee, let me know and I can let Ernie know about that.
Chris, I'd be glad to help with that.
Okay, Ellen, well, it'd be especially appropriate since you have a piece there. Draft letter to the Stebbins family. And I put this on a slide as well, because much like the appreciation, whoops, going the other way. It gave me the idea that it's something that we should be doing related to private sponsors of public art, that we should be acknowledging them. And then also, and you'll see, because Beth is going to talk to us about the inventory, it's also a way to ask them for any information that we need about the sculpture in order to complete the inventory. And so what I put in red is just what would be customized for the Stebbins piece. But otherwise, if people think this covers it, or if you have suggestions, it's something we could do with other developers, including, you know, retrospectively. It doesn't have to be just new things. It can be like Mark McNabb's pieces.
I think that's a great idea.
Right.
Yeah.
And do you think that's
there's
enough?
lots of pieces out there behind
There's-
bars. I
oh,
mean,
there's
every
so
time I go,
much.
there's something else.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it looks great. So if people agree with that, that's something we could begin to start. We can start it with the Stebbins.
It's good.
Good. Good.
Excuse me, so Chris, you would just, or we would just have that as with the document that Nancy's creating, kind of
As a template.
filed somewhere as a template, so we don't have to think too hard when
Yeah.
when question.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah. Although we'd customize,
Yeah.
you know, what do we need information about? Like, in this one, I think we might need some information about the artist, for example.
Yeah.
Maybe the material. I mean, I have no
Yeah.
idea what that material is. It looks different from far away than it does close up.
It does, yeah. It almost looks like the material that cars are
Yes.
made from.
Yeah.
Car and Okay, so continuing with updates, Nancy, I know, I think you all met and you have some updates for us.
We did, and my apologies for being kind of lackadaisical in making that meeting. I actually only emailed them and we met last week. Should have met earlier. But we identified some community partners and have all reached out. We all had people to reach out to, and we've heard back from everybody except the only thing we're waiting on is well, you can explain if you want to.
Yes, the high school, we asked for some student participation, but the club doesn't meet until this Friday.
Ah.
So they can't actually ask
Right.
until the club meets.
But we have a combination of, you know, some nonprofit leaders, some community leaders, some clergy.
Wow.
And some representatives from the high school, hopefully. And so our plan will be to get everybody together as much as possible and explain to them the project, the funding, some of the pros and cons and things to think about that we discussed, and to get their input, and then bring all that back to this committee to see what might be feasible moving forward. It's not a lot of money, but we have some ideas how to make a big bang for a little buck, and we want to just get input, you know, before we.
And we have, as you'll see when you try, we have the opportunity to raise some money, or we have the opportunity to use some money from the trust fund as well. So depending on what we all decide and what comes back, could expand that a little bit.
So did I forget anything?
No.
So we'll hopefully come back to you before the next meeting if we can get a meeting with that group scheduled before October. So
excellent. Are you in touch with Kathleen Caldolaro to let her know that? I know she's left the area.
Lives in Las Vegas now.
Yeah. I was thinking that after this group meets would be a good time to check in.
Okay.
So that her thoughts can be folded into whatever we talk about.
Okay, good.
So,
but just letting her know it's continuing to, it's alive.
Yes.
And are we still talking about the rainbow crosswalk, or is
Well,
it
it's
something
really going to be
completely different?
I think it'll come out of that discussion.
Okay.
So
that was the initial idea.
The city is not recommending that for this climate and maintenance and all of that.
So I've seen it in 3 other places recently.
Yeah.
Right around this area.
It often looks really faded. They often look like they're deteriorating.
Well, even the white ones do, so.
Yeah, they only last a year. The white crosswalks only last a year. So we have to take that into account.
Okay.
I was walking in Dover just earlier, I guess this week or at the end of last week, and I thought that their crosswalks looked kind of like sad.
Yeah.
They're colorful ports, Dover 400, those ones.
Yeah, they're very nice, but they aren't now.
They're fading.
Yeah.
They're fading rapidly. Yeah. It's I remember when the paint changed, it's actually an environmental thing. When they changed to a more friendly environmental paint, of course, it doesn't adhere in the same way that the old toxins used.
Couldn't get that stuff off with a blowtorch.
But that's great. I'm really glad you did that. And it sounds like people are really enthused.
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, like they got back to us immediately. So it's going to be a great meeting, I'm sure.
Good. And the next piece, I know Ernie and Nancy met with the subcommittee that does marketing for the Arts and Culture Commission. And I have a few notes from Ernie, but Nancy, you'll want to add to it. Her notes were that that subcommittee's goal is raising the awareness of what they're doing. And they're very concerned about trying to make sure that they clarify how they're different from what we're doing. So that's kind of where they are in marketing right now. But the idea that we should keep in touch with them, because obviously they're promoting the arts really writ large, and we have such a more focused agenda.
Yeah, they were really eager to talk with us. Many of them, we had about half the committee at our meeting, even though it was just a subgroup of their marketing committee. They didn't know what the percent for art ordinance was, some of them. So, you know, they were learning a lot about public art in the city, and they were eager to maybe touch base quarterly, have somebody from our, we decided together that perhaps somebody from our committee could meet with their marketing committee. I suggested their whole committee because I think the whole cultural planning committee could benefit from learning about public art. But anyway, quarterly, just so that they could keep abreast of the projects we're working on. Like, they didn't know about the RFP for Pierce Island. Like, they just weren't aware of many things.
It's hard to believe that, since I sent them all that information.
I know some of the people on that committee, so that's a little surprising.
It's perhaps they didn't.
It just doesn't come into consciousness.
I was thinking that perhaps they weren't thinking that what we were talking about was what you sent them. Like, I don't know if they made the connection that that's the Pierce Island project we're talking about. Like, I don't know. It was very interesting. Not all of them, just some of them.
I believe isn't it largely, though, a committee made of the history people and not arts people? Is that true,
No.
Kate?
No.
It's has a certain structure that
Yes,
council could be
so,
very involved in.
I can explain that because we created it from the Arts and Nonprofits Blue Ribbon Committee. And essentially it's 4 individuals representing nonprofit or for-profit arts institutions in the community, 4 individual artists, and 4 residents who are art patrons or supporters. And then there's Sean and I. And but they're actually trying to define what they're going to do.
What their goal is. Yeah.
And so they're trying to understand what the Public Art Review Committee does and what we're doing, because there's some challenges there. Because when you think of art, you think about what's visual in the city first, and they're not tasked with public art.
Right.
So it's hard for them to they're kind of wrapping their heads around what is really our task, because it's not public art, but it's in some ways promoting, that is part of our arts community.
It's all arts and preservation and history. It's
culture.
A lot.
Yeah.
So I have
a huge
little question. If people on that committee don't really know what the Public Art Review Committee is, how does we expect the public at large to know?
Well, I mean, by the actions that we take, by talking to city council, by doing the kind of ceremony with the codfish, by all this sort of activity that we do. But several of those people actually participated in our public input sessions. So, it takes a while. I mean, it takes repetition, and it's unusual to say that the visual art piece, because until quite recently, people would have said Portsmouth is all about the performing arts, theater, music, and that visual arts is actually a very underdeveloped form here. So it's interesting. I think it is partly because we have been getting the word out that people are thinking art is public art.
And I'm not sure people understand like the whole scope of it, like the arch, right? I would consider that public art, but people just look at it all the time, and I'm not sure they even consider that public art.
Sure. And that's where the inventory is going to be really helpful.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Oh, and also thinking about ways to get the word out. I mean, maybe we could have a monthly corner of the newsletter. So a lot of people read the newsletter and say, what's going on at the Public Art Review Committee?
That's a great idea.
Yeah. I think that's very good, because the newsletter, Monty and Stephanie did a great job of covering like the Pierce Island work, and we could continue that. I mean, maybe what we should do at each of our meetings is have a standing agenda item where we identify something we'd like them to put in the newsletter.
I can help with that.
Yeah, that's great, Beth.
And I remember when I was initially meeting with Monty, he's happy to post things, but we have to write it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Provide him with imagery and all of that, and then he'll just zhuzh it to fit,
Yeah.
fit. So as long as we're not asking him to do anything.
I'm happy to draft something.
Yeah.
For each
That would be
meeting.
great.
For this week, for this time, it'll probably be the Mortal Cod,
Yep. Yep.
prepping people
Yep.
up for that.
Especially if we know what time it
Yeah,
is.
and the advantage of creating the content is that it can go out in the newsletter as well as our social media channels.
Yes.
So
Right.
it's more than one channel.
Good point.
So one other thing that I have by way of update, I think some of you know, Sue Thorson, who really was the one who championed getting the dollars into the CIP and was a donator to the Bohenko Park. Sue's memorial is on October 12th at 10:30 at South Church. And then there'll be a reception after at Strawberry Bank. And that's a Saturday. Okay, budget and spending.
I have
Yes.
a question. Is there a way for us to identify areas or places where if people wanted to do memorials, like the Stebbins Memorial, that they would be able to? Like I'm thinking the fountain downtown Portsmouth is obviously subpar. Maybe some areas in Prescott Park that could be added to. Is there a way for us to sort of itemize some of those in case people wanted to do something?
There's been a long tradition of doing memorial benches in Prescott Park and along the water, as you know. I think we'd want to really do a plan for that and think about that and do it in a way that we might have some aesthetic control over it. Because otherwise we couldn't promise approval, or you know what I mean? So,
Right.
But we might want to consider a memorial area that could be developed over time.
Well, has anybody seen what they did at Strawberry Bank on the gardens there where
Yes.
the rest of it, like
Yeah.
they have, they're very small and sometimes you might walk by and not even notice it. But if you read them, they're really lovely.
They are.
Strawberry Bank has done a great job in a couple places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
So-
just thinking how Sue and Bob Thorson, that name, they're so
Mhm.
involved in arts. I was thinking that.
I mean, that could be something that we think about both for Pierce Island as well as the Prescott Park plans have a lot going on in them. But Pierce Island really has a lot of
Or the
options.
skateboard park or something.
For sure.
The path.
We'd want to have
Yeah.
a couple areas, or the rail trail.
Yep, rail trail.
Okay, we want to talk money. Jen and I got together to noodle this, and so this is presented with kind of draft thinking for people to add to. The first thing we tried to think about is what are the different categories of money that are going to be in the Public Art Trust. So the first thing was to kind of line those out, and that's what you see on the screen. So, the big winners are percent for art commission money, but there's also maintenance dollars in there. And you'll see in a minute because we'll show you, there are undesignated funds, and then there's also designated funds, that some leftover money in there. The allocation, which is $25,000 a year that we have in the CIP, and that I call that an allocation because it's basically a city allocation to us. And then, we can prepare grants, designated and undesignated. We can seek donations, similarly designated or undesignated. And we could also think about, kick this around a little, if we could come up with a dedicated funding stream, something like, this is not going to be possible, but license plate, a portion of license plate fees would go to, or a portion of X, a planning fee would go to, or, you know, community space. I don't know. Anyway, that's
Portion of parking at one point.
a portion of parking went broadly to the arts, right? So there are ideas like that that we could noodle around and think about. So those were categories. And then on the next slide, this is what we have in the kitty right now. We have the Pierce Island Commission, and it's there because we haven't spent it yet. Obviously, we will spend it. We have the middle school, the garage money, which will be coming to us. We have $10,000 in undesignated maintenance. That's the other 10 from the Percent for Art Commission. The Odyssey sculpture was a privately done one for Prescott Park, but they put maintenance funds in our Public Art Trust Fund.
We pressed them to do that.
Which is
I
great.
remember that. Yeah.
It's terrific. We have our first year allocation, the 25,000 for this FY. We earned a little interest. And then I put in there the TBA, the LGBTQ, even though it's not in the trust yet. That's, you know, it would either be in the trust or would be expended. So those are the dollars we had. And actually, Nancy, it occurred to me today that wouldn't there be some maintenance funds from the garage, from the Foundry Garage?
Yeah,
Shouldn't there be?
yeah, there was 10% held back for that somewhere.
So that's something
yes.
you can sleuth around for,
Okay.
because it occurred to me, and that would have been.
And they may have spent that because I know there was
of course,
there was a crack. Seth had to come and repair some of the etching because a lawnmower cracked one of the but
is that to your knowledge, Kate?
That is, and my understanding is there was a disbursement from Public Art Trust for the 400 for the for Endeavor. There was the donation that came from the city that went to
yes, of course,
Endeavor.
Yeah. So that's why we don't have any more money in there,
right?
Right. But that's where we are right now, just to give you a sense of balance.
Do any of these categories capture, for example, what if we were successful in creating a conditional use public art instead of a nice to have, but like but put it actually in like they do in Dover. Mm-hmm. Right now it's like you can do it if you want to, but we don't require it. What would that fall on?
Where would that fall? Can you go back to and see if we have that? It would be, I think it would be.
I would call it a dedicated funding stream. I mean, it would be because it would be funds that were allocated as part of the city process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm sorry, what did you say? I couldn't hear.
I would call that a dedicated funding stream because it would be monies that were part of city ordinance that were dedicated, but that weren't part of Percent for Art.
So Nancy's talking about, let's say if in community art space, somebody agrees to do to get another story on a building. They agree to do a community art space and put public art in it, but they want us to manage the public art. Good idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
All right, so now with doing this kind of thinking, then we sat down and tried to come up with some policies that would really be for our operating use to help us make decisions about money. And you know, this obviously there could be more, but these are the first 5 that we could think about. Percent for Art Commission funds that we should reserve 7 to 10% for maintenance. You know, that's already kind of out there. And that we want it undesignated so that it can be used as the need is there rather than just for a particular project.
I think what we talked about there was if we have a need for something that's already done, that we need to get money for that, that we know that we've reserved that, but it may not have anything to do in 10 years.
Right.
But something that has an immediate need.
Right. So while we have the 10,000 there for the Jabari, it may never need maintenance. So the second one, and this is up for discussion. We thought we should try to strive for at least $25,000 balance in the trust fund for maintenance before we spend any other. So if you think of it right now, we've got 10 plus the 10 from the city, from the 25 from the city is 35. So we potentially have, we have within there right now 25. The idea is we shouldn't go below that in spending outside that project. That was our thinking. That and you could say 25 is arbitrary, but it's a number we came up with. The third one, that undesignated maintenance funds are for city-sponsored public art as a priority, or you could even say exclusively. So for example, let's say the Stebbins piece. That's probably a bad example.
Black and white photos on Cup of Joe.
Oh, those are better.
Yeah.
Yes, the black and white photos, not city-sponsored, but what if they needed repainting? Would we help for that funding?
Or what about like the Ona Judge?
Or the Ona Judge? It wouldn't be a priority for us, but it might be something we would do. Does that make sense to you, that we first do things that we've sponsored? And I include in that Portsmouth 400 because that was a city project. Mari, you look like you.
Well, I'm just thinking, but not the, so under those, I'm just thinking of ideas. So not under those criteria, not the African burial ground.
Well, city sponsored.
That is city
Yes,
sponsored.
City-sponsored.
Yes, yes,
It has its own trust as well.
right.
So
It does. However, they recently talked about coming to us for $4. So that might be something that potentially would be.
Right, as you said, there's an issue.
There is a big issue.
There is a
there.
big issue because I do guided trips there and the little tiles are
Yes.
very enchanting to children to pick at.
Well, because the mortar has cracked.
Right.
They need
Yeah.
to be replaced. But so that would be an example that. So it sounds like we wouldn't want to be exclusive on that, but we'd want a priority for city-sponsored work. And then maintenance funds, we want to always encourage them to be undesignated. And then the last one is probably the hardest one. So other money, the priority would be for projects under our jurisdiction that require additional funds to be realized. First priority. So an example, LGBTQ requires another $2,000 to really do whatever. Second priority would be leveraging funding for projects under our jurisdiction, a match. We apply for a grant and we match it with $3,000 in order to do XYZ, but it's under our jurisdiction. So I think we should probably let these sit for a little bit, like for you to think about them and then take them up at the next
Are you
meeting.
going, I hate to suggest any more work for anybody, but can we see them?
Oh, sure.
I
Sure.
just work so much better when I
Yeah.
can like sit and
No,
parse it.
actually, let's just put them with the minutes and then people can look through them and
Great,
we
great.
Do you have these? No.
no, because I emailed them to you. And we just did
I did
those.
not forward them.
With number 5, I just have a quick question,
Yeah.
like the Fosse project, would that come under that? Like, because that was so unusual. I think it took some of us by surprise.
Well, I don't think it comes into the first or second
Yeah, it's something kind of different.
priority because it's not really under our,
Right. But they were asking for matching funds, so
right.
I don't know.
I mean,
do we address something like that?
We could address it. It's really how you think we should frame that kind of request.
I don't think we should frame it as an invitation.
Right, right. Yeah.
Maybe we
Kate,
shouldn't
An
address it and just take it
aside.
as it comes in.
As a positive, the artist, they had the artist there carving on the day of, so. Carving a piece of art. So that was positive. So they ended up utilizing the artist in another way.
Good, that's
But
very good.
that piece of art isn't gonna stay in Portsmouth. It's gonna,
I
we
have
don't
no
know. Okay.
I just noticed he was there. So, okay, so
So in this case, it leaves it suggests that the money that we have that's free, that isn't designated, would always would be priority for things that we are initiating or are coming to us, like the LGBTQ, where we're have a handle in managing it, and that it wouldn't be for outside projects. But let these sit with you, and we can see if we want to adopt them just for our own use. I don't see this as a formal ordinance or anything, but we're going to need guidelines. We're going to need our own guidelines for recommending spending money. Okay. Jen, anything else you want to?
No, I think that
a lot, but we only came up with these 5.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot around a lot of other things, but I think this kind of, most everything we talked about could fit into one of these.
Yeah.
And then really thinking more about number 5.
Yes.
Because I think that Fosse example was a good one. Like we kind of like,
It's a really good.
well, do we want to give them money? I mean,
Yeah.
and when this comes into play is that when someone asks the council for money for a public art project, then the park being able to come to the council and say, these are our guidelines and these are the guidelines we follow. And under these guidelines, this works or doesn't. Yeah.
I will say it did get us thinking about grants and coming up with some ideas for grant funding that and we're going to explore a little bit more on a couple of different types of grants that are modest, in the $10,000 range, but relatively easy to acquire.
Especially we were talking about the LGBTQ, that one,
Yeah.
because that we could really probably get a grant for that as well to supplement that.
Yeah.
Depending on when we decide to do it.
We also talked about like applying to like the Fabulous Find to be
So their criteria
won't.
is
They won't.
so,
No, because they just do 501c3s.
and you have to have, I think you have to have one paid staff member, if I'm not mistaken, because I've worked on a couple of different projects. Their criteria is very.
It was very specific, and it wasn't for us.
But there's state
something like
council,
that.
Right. There
Yeah.
could be other places.
Money. There are other things that we can look at. Okay, Beth.
yes. So Sean, if you can pull this up, I've been thinking about an inventory of our public art and how best to do that for some time. And I leveraged the work that Ellen had put together, I think Ellen and Chris, of initial list of some of the public art that we had. They had some content for it, and then a very helpful list of other art. And then so I built a framework that we can adjust. I want feedback on this. This was my idea of the elements that I thought were important to have in there. But I can definitely adjust it. And what you will see is one slide for each piece of art broken down by neighborhoods. And then I like to take photos. So I went around and took photos for all of these as well. And my idea was that this as a PDF could be housed on our landing page in and of itself. But then we've also collected all of this great information that we can use it for the mapping exercise or the program that Kate told us about last time. The national art place that we could link into that.
Sorry, I apologize. Where'd it go?
There's Beth.
There it is.
But it says at the top, download.
And the way my mind works is I was just trying for visually consistency in this draft, and we can take it from there. So table of contents. I didn't complete the table of contents, but I started it. So I'm envisioning, you know, one for each of these, and we might need a couple pages because we have a lot of art. And I think it's okay that we have one for each.
Yeah.
And then if you look at.
I love it by the neighborhood. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, that I took from Ellen's work and then expanded it a little bit. So, you know, here was the first one. I did a little bit of editing on the content available, broke out the artist information. I thought it was important to have directions. I mean, we know where a lot of this is, but you know, a visitor might not, or even a local might not know where that is. And then a year for the installation date. Some information, there'll be more than others. I think that's okay.
Yeah.
But as I get more information, I will probably tweak a little bit more. And I have to say, if you look at the next one, I saw Rockingham Hotel terracotta heads.
Yeah.
What the heck is that? I walked by.
You
this
haven't
place.
been on our historic tours then. Because we stand there and talk about them for about 5 minutes.
I went out the next morning. I was like, and I walk all the time, and I did not notice those lovely things. So, yeah, and then just go on. You can just sort of zip through. Obviously, need some more information. But this is my vision, and I can adjust it. We can add more. And this hearth, this is a good example. Like, you know, I just walked into the entryway and took this, but there's other
So much
interior
there.
art.
Oh my
So
gosh.
we could decide whether we wanted, like that last one page on each, you know, for each major piece of art would probably make sense. And I think that's okay.
It would. I think it would.
Really astounding.
Right?
Especially if you have the artist information and you may have much more
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if we could, this isn't going to apply in all cases, but to identify like the sponsor.
Yes.
So, you know, City of Portsmouth, Mark McNabb, who we won't
call that
know-
out as a separate section.
Call it out as
Yep.
the section, because I think that could encourage other people to think,
Yeah.
oh, I could do that on my building.
Yeah. And
But
yes.
sometimes we won't
So
know.
just so you know, Portsmouth Historical and the Athenaeum have a lot of information about who, I notice you don't have a lot of the artist stuff.
No.
We have all of that.
Well, and then that's where I thought, you know, many hands make light work.
Yeah.
If people wanted to look at this and say, well, I'd like to look, you know, dig into 5 of these.
Yeah.
You know, I'm happy to collate that and make sure it's
Oh, yeah.
uniform. And I'm happy to keep doing that. I wasn't aware this new memorial
Yeah.
was there till I
Yeah,
went to take the
Aquarius, yeah.
Yeah.
pictures of Lydia's.
Have you put all the information in this that we had in that early?
Yes,
one?
and then
Okay.
here's some, like I've put it in, I haven't edited these.
I see.
But
Yeah.
I've put in what I had, and then I, you know, found a few more pieces of art too, like this. You know, that wasn't
Yeah.
listed, but it's right there and it's gorgeous.
There is information on the Instagram Public Art Portsmouth. All the information that we have up until 2020 is on all the pieces that I put on there. So
Yeah.
artist, the name of the piece, the materiality.
Do you want to share some of that? I'm not on Instagram.
It's on Facebook too.
I'm not on Facebook.
Um,
But that's what I'm
I,
thinking. If people want to take a few of
Yeah.
them and provide me with the rough
Yeah.
content, I'm happy
I'll
to.
happily-
Is this on a document that we can all share?
Well, it's.
I'd like to-
Have it as
it's
a
huge.
PowerPoint, right?
Yeah.
Google Doc?
I'd
Insta-
rather, if you don't mind, just for consistency, I'd be happy to take the information and I'm willing to put it all together. And then everyone, you know, we can have everyone edit it if you'd like. Make sure I'm not taking liberties with the content.
What if you provided Beth a short beginning list of
Yes.
things that
Right.
you need,
Yes.
Yes.
and just have Sean email that to us, and then people like Nancy can say, oh, we've got 6 of those already, we
Yep.
don't need to collect
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
And that way, I think that'd be an efficient
Yep.
way to
That
do
sounds great.
Yeah, I'm happy to do them. We just have to know which ones to do.
Love to work on.
Great.
That would be great. It would be very fun.
Great. Well, I will add more on a separate section on sponsors, and then I'll look to be including the material. I think that's important.
I think material is good. And are there other pieces that people think are critical? We won't have all the information ever on everything.
No,
We
no, no.
know that, but.
But
to
as
the
you can see,
extent
it's
that-
pretty uniform now.
Yeah.
I'm sure when we walk around town, we will find things
Yes.
that should be
Should we
part of
also-
this that
Yeah.
we may not be thinking of.
I'm also
We think
thinking of
the
the different
arch, for
neighborhoods.
instance,
Yeah.
Music Hall
Yeah,
is the kind of thing that should be.
It's
added
on
to
there.
this.
it's right there.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, you haven't looked at it yet. I mean,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
zipping through, but
And information in buildings, I noticed when we looked at what Kate showed us, Jeff Cooper's small animal seats at the library are included in that. You know, great example. And obviously we should include some of the major pieces in the library
yep.
and here.
I'm just thinking about the neighborhoods because we're concentrated like kind of walking distance of downtown. Should we contact like the neighborhood committees to see if there's something in like near in the Dondero school or over, you know, by the,
There are in all the schools.
yeah.
Yep.
So
That's a good idea.
I think you
you
could
know,
ask
just
the
outside of
neighborhood
it.
commission. My experience as a counselor is that the neighborhood associations are overburdened.
Yeah.
and They don't
They're
take,
hard to
Well,
get in touch
they don't
with,
take
I know.
anything.
And the other point is, I mean, once we have I mean, we can keep building this. Like I had been working on this for a while and I'm like, I got to stop and just bring it in and show you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
Right. So we could get a piece where we have 50 done.
Yeah.
Where we're comfortable.
Work
We
in
put it on the
progress.
landing page,
Mhm.
you know, updated as of X. If you have a piece of art in your neighborhood, please reach out,
Yeah.
Good
you know, provide us this information. And I will take a look at that letter that we're going to send because I think that's a great way to go back to people and
some
say,
of
but
these
we need
ones.
X, Y, Z, you know, I'll list that out. So,
Yeah.
this is good feedback.
Okay, good. Thank
It
you.
looks
Beth.
great.
And
It's
I
gonna
have,
look great.
I have part 2 of that,
Yes.
which is about adding our information to the National Public Art Archive. And so I've made here, you can take one of these, you can take these. And I have done a little work on this. And essentially, it seems like so the goal of the Public Art Archive is to make public art more accessible to more people, and it's free to users worldwide. So it's an online database, and it was begun in 2010 by a group of Western states. But now it's an independent organization with 14,000 public art locations, mostly in the US, 12,000 artists, more than 20,000 objects, you know, et cetera, over 50,000 images. And each object has its own record. And so that record is located on a map. And the database also includes objects no longer on display, but you can call them up. So that's an interesting thing too, because sometimes you have to take things off display. And it also includes interviews with artists. And you could search this by collection, by location, by artist, by materials, et cetera. It just goes on and on. Map, view, year, themes, whatever. And then when you pull up the object, you can get a 360-degree view of it. You can get aerial views for outdoor art. I mean, this is a very sophisticated, and you can be connected to Google Maps for directions to the location of the artwork.
Wow.
And so you have to put all that into their database. Somebody
Yes.
has to do
So
that.
I guess that was a question. Are
Yeah.
we collecting all the stuff we need in what Beth is doing?
Well, so that's, I mean, I need to finish telling you about the
Okay.
pieces of this, and then we can talk about how do we do this.
Yeah.
So, and then there are customized searches that people can do. For instance, you can see objects that are no longer on display, but are part of a collection. They have featured exhibits that you can create. You can use a surprise me feature, which allows you to put 5 artworks from a collection or something, so that there are all these different tools that they've created to make it interesting, and so people will come back and look at it. popular work, art versus iconic work. Search options include types of art, specific year, specific material, artwork title, my location, my artist, my material. I mean, you name it, they have thought through the, and you can add music to your experience if you want to. And I don't know how all of these pieces work, but they've really tried to think through, if somebody's going to take an art tour of your community, how do you want to organize it? Also, artists can document their own work. And this started in 2010 with a group of Western states, and now it's a national organization. There are fees attached to this. This is not free. And I haven't looked into that part yet because I wanted to, and the sheet of paper I gave you has some of that information on it. But that's something I figured this was a good way to begin this process, just to present this information, and then people can go away, look at the site themselves, play with it a little bit, and then we could come back and have a conversation about, is this something we would like to do with our art listings in our community?
So just to make sure I'm clear, to put things in the database, no cost. So at minimum, we could put our things in their database.
I think that's right, Chris.
That sounded like,
That's what they said during
Yeah.
the meeting we had, that they said anyone can list anything,
Yeah.
that's fine.
so it might not have all the bells and whistles, but at minimum, we could
Right, that's
put
right.
things in their
We would be
database.
part of this.
Yeah.
But do
Exactly.
we do actually the physical work uploading it? How does that work?
I have not explored that piece yet. That's, if people say, okay, this is something we want to be thinking about, then I can take it to the next level.
The bells and whistles, like the music and the aerial view and the 360-degree stroll, that's not required.
That's not what.
No,
it's not
definite.
required.
Well,
Right.
the music definitely isn't required. I think these are the kinds of add-ons that
Make it popular.
that
Exactly.
you can do if you, maybe we have a spectacular piece that we really want to highlight. So we don't have to do the 360-degree view for every piece of artwork that we have. But if there are a few, maybe that would be important.
Yeah, I think it's worth
Good point.
you asking those, that's a great idea, and asking those questions and finding that out as we fill in the inventory. So we'll know what we need to be
And
thinking
finding
about.
out like what the process, like, do we just upload it, or is there a place that they have like a commission or people that look at it to make sure that
That's a
it's
good
accurate?
question.
Or like, because I could post something from Portland, Maine on Portsmouth, and how would they know?
Is it
So
appropriate?
right,
Yeah.
and is it
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah,
Right.
those are good questions.
So as I said, I wanted to first put this out in front of you, get your questions. So, and then see about contacting them and going to the next level.
I certainly think we would at least want to have our really iconic city-sponsored pieces. This is probably an incremental thing that we would move into as gradually, but I think those are all great questions to find out about. Excellent. So Phil is here. Come up to the table.
And also, if anybody thinks of anything afterwards, just email me and I'd be glad to add that to my list of questions.
Just what kind of resolution do they need? Pictures?
Phil
Resolution
Davis,
for
who's the
pictures, all that kind
principal
of stuff.
of the middle school. And Phil, we have a few members, we have 3 more members who are not able to come tonight, but this is our park committee. And we wanted to have an initial conversation with you just to get a sense of how you'd like to proceed. We have actually have our hands on $35,000 so toward the middle school public art. And we, the world is kind of open on this. It could be something where you are thinking of a commission of an artist, a mural for the school inside or out, a sculptor, or it could be an artist who works with students to create some things. It could be purchase of original art that of like local artists or other artists. It's where it is, what it is, the medium, all those things are open. And especially because it's a school, the process as well, if it was a different kind of site, we might act as a committee and commission something, but we really want it to be something that the school engages with. So, who you'd like to have involved, what the timing should be, your initial thoughts. We just think of this as a short brainstorm to get us started.
Yeah, thank you. First off, so I know I've been at the middle school for quite a few years, and I was there when the building was redesigned and rebuilt, and there was always this phantom money for public works of art that I chased at one point and then gave up on. So when I had your phone call, I thought it really does exist. And so I did have some questions when public works of art. Well, does it have to be accessible to the public? Because that then obviously the public and the students is different than welcoming in all passersby. It's not really something we want to do.
It's an interesting question based on what we just talked about, because public art is often thought of as art that is accessible to people who like work in a building. So there's a lot of public art in restaurants, but we're not necessarily inventorying that public art because you might have to be a patron to do it. But I know there's a lot of public art in schools, and the public there are the students and their families.
Yeah, so that's helpful. And ironically, we've got a lot of different work groups within the school, but we have kind of a climate and culture group that has been meeting for the last couple of years. And one of our initiatives, we kind of rounded the corner on one, and we said, okay, what are we biting off next? And this was winter to spring last year. Is we called them just dead spaces in the schools, but just where we just have paint on the walls and nothing else. And so our first step was really kind of a walk and photograph. And so we have our list of dead spaces at this point. And then we, toward the end of last school year, so we're really kind of May, and everything's going crazy on the school front as you're winding down and getting ready for the next year and everything. We're kind of looking at, okay, well, what are our next steps? A piece of that is, what resources do we have? And they're really not many when it comes to what can we put. So this is a very timely conversation. One of the ideas of how to use spaces is to kind of recognize different themes throughout the year. So when you talk about, like right now, it's Latino Heritage Month from, I think, September 15th to October 15th. There's Women's History Month. There's African American History Month. There's Native American. All these different points that we talk about in the school, but they're not physically recognized. Now, thinking on a school budget rather than having real monies, one of the ideas was to say, okay, if we get frames and posters, and I don't think that's not necessarily the work that you guys are interested in, but to have a rotating piece. So like, hey, we're going to have for these 30 days, we'll have these pieces of art hanging in these spaces, and then we'll shift it over. So the idea really is to physically have a recognizable honoring of whatever it is the themes are. And so I would definitely be interested in that kind of conversation if it goes that way. But that's not the only way to,
I could see in a case like that, it could be commissioning some local artists to create those original pieces for you that would be, or with kids even, or small works that could be portable, done with kids that could be rotated, something like that. Definitely.
And one element of it could be, if you had one primary space, it could involve lighting or some kind of amazing frame that they would all fit into. So that could be part of the art feature as well.
In a case of some sort, if you wanted to, if it doesn't have to be like a painting, it could be artifacts or something.
Yes, it could be artifacts or some combination. Yeah.
And another beautiful piece of the school is we have display cases, lockable glass display cases in many locations, and we now kind of have a cycle, but to say, have all this beautiful space, let's please fill it up. And so we, people get busy doing their classroom work and their thing, and then they forget about outside the classroom. So I'm trying to bring attention to those things a little bit. But
Do you have a list of those themes that the committee is interested in?
I do not with me, but we started to recognize it, and then of course you realize that every month has 3 months of things that are being recognized at any one given time. And so then we started having conversations about, okay, well, how do we call that list down without marginalizing another group by accidentally leaving them off? And so we've talked about that. We've only met once so far this year. I think we meet again the next week or the following.
To me, this could also be something, though, that with this money you get started, but I mean, it's eminently grant fundable or PTA fundable, that this gives you a start on things that you then can continue with other donations or whatever, if we get a good process set up.
And
So I would say that a month is a long time. Kids need, 2 weeks might be plenty of time, and that would give you a lot more opportunities to change what everyone is looking at.
Yeah.
Right. And there's, when you look at the student pathways through the school, certain students are never going to make it into this wing in a given period of time because they've got these classes. And then, so even we've discussed that even if a work of art sits in one wing for a period of 9 weeks and then rotates to another grade level in a different spot, that's still doable for us because you're exposing different students to that same experience.
So the themes don't have to be tied to a specific month necessarily. It can be general themes.
They
so
can't, they really, I mean, this is very kind of new thinking, and one of the ideas, what somebody else talked about, again, artists in residence coming in and working to create different works of art in the space. There's a lot of.
And does New Hampshire still have an artist in residence program?
There are grant funds that can be found out there, to do that. Yeah.
They're small, like 2,500, I think.
It's probably,
and they have to be matched. So this is an opportunity where we could use funds to match grants as well. That's another way to think of it.
There are also some wonderful, like Arts in Reach, nonprofit organizations that work with kids to create art in spaces.
And we have some artists locally who certainly have done that. Yeah. So that's another, that would seem to me to be one decision that we want your committee to weigh in on, because that might, that would affect both a list of artists that you would want to select from or interview, or we could help collate and then you can interview, or some combination. You could do perhaps half of the project like that and half might be commissioned.
Right.
It's really
so what I'm wondering for this group, what would be helpful actionable steps on my part?
I think it would be helpful for the committee to take some of these ideas and say, what's your what would you most like to do? We can probably give you some estimates of cost. A good artist in residence project, $5,000, I'm going to say. And that's typically what the council does. So you can think within that 35,000, how this plays out. Depending on who the artist is and the scope of what we're creating, if it's a 2-dimensional thing versus a sculpture, it's going to, increase their costs.
Right, and how long the artist in residence is there. Sometimes it's just 1 or 2 days, and sometimes it's like a couple of months. So
right. But we can help with some costs like that. I think if you're going to, it'd be helpful to sort of scope out what the whole might look like, and then how to stage it, because you'll probably learn a lot from the first piece. Because it sounds like you don't want to put us all in one piece. You want some variety for several spaces.
I think so.
It sounds like
I
it.
think so. And we only spoke the other day and I was
Yeah.
happy to come because we have been talking about that. But I think given the addition of the resources of money and expertise, I think that will add a lot. It'll be a much more rich discussion next time we meet.
So would you say that it would be the climate and culture group that you already have that would kind of oversee this? And
I would think so, or we may take we have a couple, depending on different projects that we have had going, we've had different shoot off who's going to manage this now that it's underway type thing. So probably climate and culture group to it initially, and then there may be an offshoot of the whatever we may call it.
One thing that you mentioned the display cases, and I'm sure you know this, but sometimes you just need to be like, oh yeah, I forgot. The library is the keeper of the city's vast collection of artifacts and artwork, like turnaround, like that sort of thing.
I did not know that actually.
Okay.
yeah.
So, I mean, if you go to the library in all of your multitude of spare time that I'm sure you have, well, it's right next door. But thematically, even like you could probably connect the theme, the art, if you want to do something. We probably have artifacts, artwork, documents, and things that would fit into those themes for any display cases that are part of the city already, that are now sitting in storage.
There are lots of carved decoys.
We'll figure out how to fit
This
that
is
in.
true.
It's actually from the Adams collection. There are just tons of carved decoys.
Photos, all kinds, there's just all kinds of stuff.
Well, really anything of interest. I mean, kids stop and see. We have almost 500 kids in the building, each with unique interests, right? So depending on what it is, where you're going to catch somebody else's eye who's going to stop and imagine, wonder, and have questions and move on, while some other kid will never even notice that it was there. Maybe more of those than the other, but you never know.
You mentioned at the beginning that there were lots of, or a number of spaces that you felt were kind of like blank and not activated. So, I mean, it would really be helpful to know what they were and what, like were they walls?
Yeah, I do have that kind of list, so I can share that.
That'd
Just
be
really
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah, but mostly walls, and then the ever problem in schools anyway. So we have dead spaces, tremendous ones in our stairwells, and there's fire code to
The stairwell's empty.
deal with, right? So
But you could
paint on the wall.
They could be
but
painted.
often can't hang anything.
Right.
Really, you can't hang anything that's flush against the wall.
Right.
No, it has to be flame retardant.
Yeah.
I don't know. Greenland Central School somehow has artwork in their hallways, but I'm told always that we cannot. So,
But the stairwells painting offers an opportunity. I mean, that's a great one to consider. The outside courtyard. I mean, of course, that brings its own issues with it in terms of durability and cost, but that offers an opportunity as well.
My mental image, I haven't been in the middle school.
sure.
Well, anyway, but that big central space with all that glass, I mean, what do you have in there? It just seems like
And that's that courtyard. And so there's
incredible.
You did have one of the art and public spaces. There's hanging banners. And so we try to keep them updated, although kids move awfully quickly through the school. There are probably 15 to 20 banners, double-sided, that are hanging as almost pennants from the ceiling of kids doing different activities throughout the year. And they add a lot
they're very
to that space. They're black and white, almost sepia tone. That's a really nice piece throughout there. But then out in the courtyard itself, it's a very pretty space. It's difficult to make it a usable space for a 12 to 14-year-old who has energy to burn.
Well, that's actually, that caused me to mention one other kind of art, which would be, I'll call it landscape art. or land formation or some formation in that courtyard.
Yeah.
That's another possibility. When you see some of the things like outside the hearth even that are, they're large pieces that are,
Right.
they just create interest, but also not that you have a lot of land around there, but there's also a possibility of doing something with the land, not to.
Well, I have a whole nother plan for that,
Oh.
honestly. I don't have a lot of time, but I have a lot of vision. The field outside of the school that it abuts the public library field. There's a ton of research about the importance of nature for students when we have anxiety out the roof. And I've talked to the PE guys and I've talked to some other people. What would it mean if we created some landscape in that? So created mounds, placed boulders,
Yes.
some trees and plantings to have intentional small nature spaces that kids get used to.
And this certainly could contribute to that. You think of, we had talked when we did the public input for the Pierce Island, some people had talked about like a labyrinth, ideas for landforms that you could use. So that's another way to think of this as, or the artistic elements of that.
Yeah.
Can I ask you just a little bit about the committee members? Do you have anybody from like the art department, like Anna Nuttall or
Anna's
anybody?
on that.
Okay,
Anna's
great.
on that, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I think that in terms of next step, it's probably to share with the committee some of what we've just talked about, and then signal to us when, you'd like either like us to do some research, like artists. I mean, Anna will know artists as well, but artists who might, do some work of this type. I've actually ordered a book about public art in schools that hasn't come yet, but I thought that might be give some inspiration. Just lots of photographs around the country of different things that have been done in schools.
And I can tell you, I work at the Portsmouth Historical Society, and we're doing these family days, and we have some really cool artists coming in. We have somebody, a Native American artist who made some baskets with us last year, and she's making some sort of structure outside of the JPJ house for a family day. But some of these people do not charge much money at all to work with kids and families. So.
Glass, also we're thinking of like the Foundry Garage where the glass etching was done, or stained glass, Mara mentioned the large glass in areas. So I think it's important to like kick around a lot of ideas first.
Absolutely.
And we're happy to do that with the committee or hear from the committee, their ideas that, we can add to. But I think our role will be to just help shape a project and then
and help fund it.
Yeah. And my idea was using posters because I don't have the money.
And do the contract, the contract work that will contract the artists.
Sure. Fantastic.
So so just signal us about what you think next
Sounds
steps
good.
would be.
And just be in contact with you directly.
Sure.
Fine.
Yeah. And or members of this committee could also meet with your committee just to hear what people are thinking and see the spaces as Mara talking about.
Great.
Okay.
Fantastic. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
And your
inviting
teeth,
me.
your teeth look good too.
Yeah, I just keep fishing the dentist.
Good. State Department bound.
Yeah. Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, one other thing, and that's that we've got on our next meeting, we've got a land use review for the HDC. These are for the 3 sculptures that are being proposed for the Newbury building downtown.
Oh, yeah.
And which is in the what's now an alley behind it, but will become a
Like a commercial way kind of.
Commercial way.
Yeah.
A path. And these are 3 sculptures that are being proposed. One is what I would call a sculpture. One are faces in the walls, terracotta, And then another is more of a design on walls, and I'm not sure if we'll need to review that or not. But anyway, they're going to HDC with these in November. So the idea is that our October meeting, we would review and develop a recommendation. If you want to see more about this, and I'll send the links for this, I just looked it up before we came. You can watch an HDC meeting where they talked about the plans for this building.
Wow.
Or you can look on, the planning department has an active list of projects that people are proposing, and you can look at the plans, the elevations for the buildings. So we'll send you links for those, so you can just, before the meeting, just to get a little orientation, because it's going to completely change that area.
So are there pictures of the actual proposed artwork?
We'll be able to have that.
Okay.
Before
Sorry,
the
where
meeting.
is it?
Yeah.
Is there a way?
Building.
It's the Newbury building.
It's
Oh,
behind,
David
it's like
Hines.
behind it, like
So can
between
we
the
walk
garage
there?
and,
I know where you.
yeah, you know it.
I mean, the last time it was a long time
Right
ago.
now, no, because
it's blocked.
it's blocked,
Right.
but the whole idea is opening it up from High Street all the way down to where Gillies is.
Right.
Oh,
So the idea is a public,
right.
attractive landscaped walkway that goes
Extension of commercial alley.
all the way down.
You,
Yeah.
you can look, Seacoast Online posted a big article about this recently, so you can
Really?
look
I
it up.
must have missed
Yeah,
it.
it was
It's a
Okay.
Mark McNabb
pretty
project.
robust article.
It also involves leveling it. Right now, it's a huge hill.
It's
So
a
it
big
Right,
comes
it's,
down.
right, it looks
So
so
doing all the underground
foreboding.
infrastructure.
It is foreboding right now. I would
Yes.
not
Yes.
recommend spending.
Yeah, no,
time
don't
there.
walk there.
No.
Especially at night.
But,
But he's not asking for any funding. He just wants
Oh, no, no.
approval to go ahead with
because
this.
they're going
Okay.
to the HDC, and this will be the first time where the idea is we review it before it goes to HDC. We send our recommendations to HDC.
Right.
Good.
So,
Yay.
yeah.
And we have a Zoom link for all of the meetings, correct? Because October 23rd, I might not be here.
So this is an important thing I wanted to note. Our Zoom links have to be changed because remember, we changed these dates because of the holidays.
Right.
So this is not on our regular
Oh, yeah.
cycle. Because of Halloween, Thanksgiving,
And
and
Christmas.
Christmas, we changed. So I'm glad you raised that. So we need to withdraw those old ones and put the
Okay.
new ones up.
Of course.
Well, Chris, one question, as I draft something for Monty after this meeting, are
Yes.
we gonna have the date of that event soon for the COD?
Still in
Okay,
my
so let me
understanding is
know.
it's
I'll
still in
draft something and
process.
leave that blank.
Yeah. Anything else? We got a lot done,
Oh, yeah.
and we have a lot of good things coming.
This is what happens when you form a committee. You form a committee.
Yes. No, I was just thinking, oh, it's a lot and we are.
Well, of action-oriented people.
So you want me to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Yes.
So I make a
Second.
motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Rosie.
A good meeting.
That's a good meeting.
And we need to,
Oh, right, we're collecting our.
Thank you for doing that.
Our
Oh,
names.
sure.
Our names.
Yeah,
You want to pass? me
great
your name?
idea. So if anybody's watching.
Thank you.